Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Sorry it's been a while since my last video. A lot of things in life interfere with your chess, especially making chess videos. It's been a little tough in my business lately, been working a lot of hours. And also a very close personal friend of mine passed away. That's kind of tough as well. Anyway, enough of that. This is a game that I played in round 4 of the New York State Chess Championship 2016. Played over the Labor Day weekend. Now, I don't show many games of my own, but this is certainly one of them. Now, this is a heck of a game. You're going to see as I go on here, I'm going to get a little more detail. White is my opponent, Mr. McGaffigan, I believe it's pronounced. And I am black. Let's get to it. It's going to be a King's Indian, which is always fun, but I really screw this up. I'll just go through the opening a little bit. E4, D6, Knight F3. Pretty much standard stuff per se. I'm not an opening expert by any means. This C6 move looks a little weird, but the computer actually is one of the top choices. I need to get more control over the D5 square. And that was my way of doing that. And B5 as well. Queen C2. And I don't know what I was thinking in this one. I should have went E5, but I moved the pawn again. Cardinal sin. Moved the same pawn twice in the opening. But what I wanted him to do was close it up a little bit. Now you're going to find out that pawn on D5 becomes very interesting later down the road. H6. Just to stop his bishop, his knight from coming in. Rook D1. So to go knight to G4. H3 just to provoke that, and I put my knight back. So I got some concession, to be honest with you. I mean, the G3 square is a little less secure, but I wanted to see what his reaction was going to be. Rook B1. And I pick one of the computer moves, A6. Got to get control over that B5 square because he's coming. Bishop D3. Interesting on that move, though. I think Bishop F4 might have been much better served to develop a piece. Now, B6 was probably called for here. You're going to see later that causes me a huge, huge problem. I went knight to E5 instead. He takes, I take. Now he goes B4. Small advantage for white here in the computer, less than a pawn. I just wanted to open it up a little bit. I ended up being so cramped all the time in these games, I didn't want that. But that's exactly what ends up happening. After rook takes, you're going to see that this pawn here is going to be a pain in my behind. Queen C7, Bishop E3, Knight to H5 was probably decent, trying to get to F4. I decided to move the knight back. Actually, what I wanted to do was the knight to come here. That was my goal. Rook comes over now. Even if I do go knight here, this bishop is stuck babysitting this pawn. And I really can't. Because if he decides he wants to trade, that queen's not guarding B7 anymore. Knight to C5 anyway. So I figure there's no way he's going to give up this rook for the bishop and pawn. Bishop B2, he backs off the bishop. He wants to keep him. I decided to open it up a little bit. Now, right now, I got a really crappy position. I mean, my bishop on G7 is worthless. He's got a pass pawn now on D5. E6 was probably a way to loosen up a little bit. But I decided to go F5 instead. Now, it's about a point and a half, a little bit more advantage for white. He decides to go F3. And it's funny how you see a game after. And I had a lot of good intentions on this move here, but on rook f6. What I'm trying to do is get this pawn to come up so this bishop can be freed. Decides to go rook back. Now, I think knight to a4 was reasonable for him. Maybe even d6, just to bust things up a little bit. Because then the knight can go to d5. Pawn here, and if I take, knight goes here, forking the queen and the rook. But he decided to move the rook back. And that told me he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do. He really didn't have a plan. Not that I have much of one either, but I decided to play f takes and pawn takes. Now I thought to myself, okay, I got the f file open now. Maybe if I can get out of this mess, I'll be able to try to get something going here. And I thought, and I thought, and I thought, and actually this is one of the top choices of the computer as well. I decided to go bishop f8. Now this bishop wasn't really going anywhere, fighting against my own pawn. I'm thinking down the road when I pawn push, this bishop will have some scope. He goes rook to d1. And that was the other reasons why I put the bishop on f8. Because he decides to go d6, he can't. Now we're on move 23. And I'm eating up a ton of time here. I'm usually not in time trouble. The time controls for this tournament were 40 moves in 110 minutes, and then sudden death 30. Oh, with a 10-second delay, no increment. And this is where I slip up. I probably should have moved my bishop to d7 just to move it. I put the rook there. Why, I don't know. I didn't want him to push the pawn, but I knew he couldn't. It's one of these things you look at it later and you can't figure out why he did it. He moves bishop back to f2, which I find interesting. What he's trying to do, I guess, is get his bishop to here, but it's not going to do much good because my rooks can't come back if the bishop is there. I think knight a4 was probably his best bet. So I finally moved the bishop, finally. He decided to put the rook back. Now it's showing a small advantage for white. b6 is the obvious move. One of the reasons why I kept the rook was to guard this square. But I decided to move the bishop back, which is really dumb in retrospect. Bishop f3. Why he did that, I don't know. I don't think he had much of a plan either. That bishop is absolutely doing nothing there. So I decided to put my rook back on f6. After I realized my mistake. It's tough in chess when you make a mistake to admit it and put a piece back and lose a tempo. But, you know, the heck with your pride. You're trying to win the game. And I'm under the gun right now. Rook to d1. I just moved the rook back. I'm figuring, okay, let's see what he's going to do. I was getting a little low on timer on move 27. I've got to get to move 40. I've probably got maybe 15 minutes left now for 13 moves. Queen e2. I decided to move the bishop up. And this is where I think he gets a little ambitious. Not much he really can do, but he decides to go g4. That basically now, according to the computer, puts the game at even. So I put the bishop to g7. I'm going to bring this other rook up, and eventually this rook here. Now I've got something. I got some counterplay. Bishop g2, he comes back. I move the rook to f8. He moves the rook back over. Now what he's threatening is bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes pawn, and that would be terrible for me. Of course, that's check, but even still. So I decided to block it again, or I should say cover it again. He goes bishop e3. Now he just seems to be wandering. Now I'm in really, really bad time trouble. We're on move 32, and I've probably got 3-4 minutes left. And I thought for a little bit. Didn't have much time, but I thought it would be a decent move here. I don't want to move the queen. I don't want to move the knight. Bishops, maybe rook. That's on the d file to f6. And I picked one of the top computer moves, which I was pretty proud of. King h7. Queen d2. As you can see, I was worried about that. Now the king and the bishop are guarding this pawn, so it's okay. I moved the other rook over. Now I'm feeling a lot better now, but the time pressure is getting to me. Rook to d1. I move the bishop up. He does a move here I was really surprised. He probably should have went d6. He went king h1. Yeah, he improved his king a little bit, but... So I decided to go queen c8. Not much of a threat, but pretty much this pawn is frozen now. Queen e2, h5. I'm trying to break it open. And I'm on the 36th move. I've got maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. He goes g5, threatening the rook. Okay, where do I put the rook? Put an f4. Don't want to do that. I lose the exchange. So I put him back on d6. And this is where it's one of those rules, folks. And it always, always comes back to bite you in the butt. If your opponent is having time trouble like I was, don't move quickly. You think, well, I'll move fast, and my opponent will make a mistake. But you do too. And without thinking, he went h4. That loses the exchange. That's move 38. Bishop, queen has to move. Bishop takes. Queen takes. Now I've got maybe a minute left, so I'm going to use it all. What's the best move here? I didn't find it, but I found a decent one. e6. So that was my 40th move. Got another half an hour on my clock, and I'm a lot better off. And so I'll tell you, I was breathing a big sigh of relief. Now, too, you can't get too cocky. You got to maintain the tension, at least in your mind. He went queen to b1. Going after that pawn. And I went rook f7. Now if bishop takes, queen takes. This rook's guarding the pawn. And this is where I think he really, really miscues. He goes bishop to h3. And just like that, the game is over. You can see the winning move here. Stop the video to see the winning move. Rook to f3. Now that attacks both his bishops, and none of them are defended. So he decides to get rid of, take the pawn. Queen to g1 maybe. I don't know. There's nothing good here. So bishop takes. I played knight takes. And you can also see this knight's hanging too. So d takes. I thought about this for a while. I've got a free bishop on e3. Well, I could very well check here even and pick up this pawn. But I did play the best move, and I was pretty proud of that. And that's queen takes. Now what's happening is the threat is rook here winning his queen. He comes up at g2. What else could he do? I took the bishop. he decided to block that rook from coming in. So I thought for a while, that's myself, you know what? I'm just going to take his knight. And that's what I did. Pawn takes, queen takes check, king goes to g1, rook to h3. Now I'm threatening to win his queen. He goes queen to c2, but little does he know that still loses his queen with a queen check. Rook to king to f2. I check with a rook. He takes. We play a couple of more moves. King to d2. And I take his passed pawn. And that's the end. I was really, really happy. I played really badly for a while. He really had me on the ropes, but it had me pretty cramped up due to my poor play, but he couldn't seem to formulate a plan. And maybe that's the lesson from this game. We both had crappy plans. I don't think we had any plans at all, either of us. We were just winging it, and that's not the way to do it. It's better to have a crappy plan than no plan at all. So anyway, folks, that's my game from round 4 of the New York State Chess Championship 2016. I was in the under the 1600 section. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll catch up on my videos. I got a lot of videos to show from the Chess Olympiad still. A lot of action coming around for chess in the next few weeks. Of course, we all know the World Championship is in November. That'll be fun. So, I'll say at the end of my video what I always say. If you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.